You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. And I am your host, Rick Franzi. And boy, do we have an interesting show planned for you. Why do you say? Because our guest, as you can see, is Tony Everett. He is the founder and head coach of My Personal Best Coach. Tony, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful to be here.
Yeah, I am looking forward to this conversation today. Let's start out simply with kind of your origin story. As I said, you're the founder, and I'm wondering, what was your original inspiration, or maybe what was the motivation for you to start My Personal Best Coaching?
Yeah, it actually came from me founding a different organization called PureGame, which was a nonprofit organization that helped kids through sport with life lessons, character education, and leadership skills. In working in that arena, one of the things that I noticed was a lot of the people I was talking to didn't necessarily know too much about the direction they wanted to go in life. And I'm talking about the adults that I would speak to. And one of the things about nonprofits is they're not necessarily profitable. And so I thought that if I'm going to keep it going as a nonprofit, I need a side hustle. And I'm fairly good at coaching, communicating, talking, and listening to people. So I looked at my options, and starting my own coaching business to help subsidize the salary of a nonprofit seemed a fantastic idea. And all I did was take the lessons that I was learning from the kids that I was working with and move them to the big kids in the business world, which was perfect. It was a perfect fit.
So what have been the pivots to the business since you launched your firm?
Yeah, and that's an interesting question. I learned to not like the word pivot because I've done it so many times. So it started off that I was coaching athletes in transition from their sporting career to the business career. And what I found in working with athletes is they're very reluctant to give up their sporting career. They don't necessarily want to admit that their sporting career has come to an end. So working with that audience was challenging to start off with, but it just didn't seem to go anywhere. So I had to sit back and rethink. And what I realized is I started PureGame because there was a lot of lost kids, confused kids in the world. And what I'm realizing, there's a lot of lost and confused adults in the world. They go to work, but they're kind of checked out. They don't necessarily want to be there. And with the whole idea of the quiet quitting thing, with a huge percentage of the workforce in that quiet quitting stage, I realized that as adults, we're as lost as the children that we're trying to, bring into the working world. So I pivoted to that world to say, hey, if you're lost, confused, you don't necessarily have a passion or a purpose, then that's the people that I want to plug into and help, because people with passion and purpose do so much more in the world. And it's a fantastic place to live when you find that passion.
So we're going to talk about My Personal Best Coaching, because I'm curious now, put a finer point on who you're really helping, the niche that you have focused on, the problems that you're able to coach and solve for them. And then maybe tell us a story or explain the type of clients that you have found who are really getting maximum value from the engagement with you.
Sure. So what happens is people leave school, leave college, and they go and find a job. And what they do is they find a job that pays the bills. And most of the time, what they're doing really doesn't have a great deal to do with their college degree. A lot of the time. Sometimes it does, but not always. And so they get into this work, and it's all well and good to start off with, but then life starts to take hold, and you start to realize that work is actually can be challenging and hard. You've got people to deal with, you've got bosses to deal with, you've got clients to deal with, and it can get a little bit much if you're not that passionate about what you do. And people are just checking in, checking out, clocking in, clocking out. And so what I want to try and do is wake them up and help them plug into that passion. What is it that they love to do? And so as in a story on that, I was talking to someone who was actually a fundraiser, and he was talking about not liking where he was and talking about going to get another job as a fundraising job. And I was like, why would you go and just plug into another company? You're dealing with the same issues. All you're doing is pushing it sideways. And so I talked to him about what his passions are, and he actually loves fundraising, but in a different way. What he does is he loves teaching people about fundraising. And so we talked about it, and we got him into his own job and his own company, and he started his own company up, and it's doing wonders in the world. And that's what I want to change people to. Find out what they love to do.
Well, the Gallup surveys of employee satisfaction reveals that a very high percentage of people are not engaged, are not passionate with purpose. So there's a huge opportunity, isn't there, Tony?
Yeah, there is. It's 53% actually of America right now. 53% of America as the percentage of not engaged, with 17% saying they're actively disengaged, which is huge. So that means only 30% of American employees are actively engaged in what they do.
So 7 out of 10 people are a client for your coaching services.
Yeah,
right?
kind of similar. And it's obviously a scale, right? You get the ones that are really done with work and they're out, but then you've also got the ones that are just a little disgruntled. And when you actually put them in that survey, I'm sure it comes up as like somewhat disengaged. But yeah.
Well, I really like the way you kind of set this up, in that many young people go to college really not knowing why. They get a degree. Maybe it's a professional training degree like accounting or something that they can leverage later. Or maybe it's not. And their first job isn't probably as well thought out as it should be. And once you get into a career, you become sort of in that vein. You want to, maybe it's a rut, right?
Yeah.
And so many people are somewhat years into the career. You get a family, you get a mortgage, you get commitments. All of a sudden now you're locked in, aren't you?
Right. Because you're earning the money and the money pays the bills. And so now you're sitting there going, well, I can't get out of this because I'm paying the bills. So I better just pull up my socks and go to work.
Right. And like the example you gave us, which I think is really instructional, what do they know to do? They know to do the same thing somewhere else and hope that maybe that is the solution to their issue. But what you help that person realize is it's not the same thing somewhere else. It's the same thing in a different environment completely. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that's the power of being able to coach. So, I know you do work with youth soccer. I'm wondering how much of the athletic coaching, what we think of maybe when we think of a athletic coach, is applicable to a executive professional business coach, Tony?
Yeah. Everything, really, when you think about it, outside the X's and O's and the skills you need to perform within a given sport is very much a mental game. And you've got to know how to turn up mentally prepared for your game. How do you handle mistakes? How do you handle when the referee calls against you? Whatever it is. But that's the same in life. In the workforce, how do you handle it when a client doesn't do what you'd like it to do, or your boss calls you in? It's the mental game of that. And how do you bounce back? How do you handle mistakes? How do you kind of see the vision that you want in your future career? So yeah, I think sports has a great deal to do with the world of business.
That's interesting, because tell me what you think. My personal belief is, in any endeavor, perseverance is the key to success. Resiliency, being able to get back up after being knocked down, because we all get knocked down.
Yeah.
It's just, it is the way of the life. It's just, it's going to happen. And so it's one thing to have a failure in your cubicle at your company. It's another one to have it on the pitch when, I don't know, some number of people, maybe just your family, are watching that too, right? So that's a different level of performance stress, I would think.
Yeah, it is. But the reactions can still be the same. And it's how what do you do? Do you let it define you?
Right.
Right? Do you let that mistake define you? And do you then go into the next business transaction with that mistake hovering over your head? Or can you let it go? So what now? What? On to the next.
So what, not what. That's right. It's not what happens, it's how you react to it,
Yeah.
right? So, as you've been an entrepreneur building your business, have you ever felt isolated, alone, kind of challenged by the opportunity?
Uh, yes,
Okay.
every day. It's hard work running your own business. You are it. The buck stops with you, and so there is no one alongside you, right, that can help you. So it's really important that you get connected. And in fact, what I did with my personal best coaching is still there, but I've actually transitioned again and now working for with an organization called Driven Leadership, who is also into leadership training and coaching and the like. And I did that mainly because of the company that it allows me to work with. I now have people working alongside me that actually help me become the best version of myself. The so what now what actually comes from Driven Leadership, and that's kind of one of their ethics is just, what do we do now? How do we move on? And that has been a transition that's helped me no end in the my personal best coaching side of things. It just helps me do more.
Yeah, being around people that can inspire you
Mhm.
is really valuable. And I think that's for every founder, finding the right group of people to help you grow your business and grow yourself is so very important.
Yeah.
Uh, do you have a piece of business advice that you have found valuable that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, I think it has everything to do with being the founder. Actually,
Mm,
sometimes being a founder, we think that this is it. We've got to give everything to it, and we don't give up. We keep going. We keep going. We keep going. And I certainly believe that, even with the nonprofit that I founded with PureGame. It was a wake-up call for me to start my personal best coaching and do another little side gig, as it were. But what it made me realize was, hey, I don't have to keep doing this on my own. I can actually fold this into a company if I allow my ego to drop. I
mm.
don't need to hold on to the fact that, well, I'm the founder, I've got to keep going. I can actually sit there and go, that Driven Leadership for me was a better option, which allowed me to excel in my personal best coaching work.
Uh-huh.
But the work at Driven Leadership now helps me come to a different level. So I think it's being aware of our ego. So the advice would be aware of your ego and let it go, because it can be preventing you from doing so much more.
Yeah, that's really good insight, but hard to accept. You can hear great insight, ladies and gentlemen, but you got to let it in. And being successful makes it hard to give up maybe what has defined you as success, right?
Yeah.
Many business owners and founders, they are what they've created.
Yeah. Yeah, they are. It's the identity around them, right? It's the same as athletes, by the way.
Really?
I'm a football player. I'm a
Okay.
baseball player. It's their athlete, and it's how they communicate. As a founder, we can do much the same thing. We communicate from the identity of the company that we've started. And it's that human nature, right? That if I'm so deep into this company, then to come out now would be a failure. Really? Or would it release something that actually helps you do more and be more, as it were?
Yeah, I see that when some of my clients who are SMB business owners are approached by an outside investor, maybe it's a
Mhm.
private equity company, it becomes a challenge for them to recognize that maybe by letting some people into their business, they can have a bigger business than if they
Mhm.
hold it all to themselves. But it is a different world when you're no
Yeah.
longer solely in charge. It's
Yeah, it
hard.
is. Yeah. Yeah.
really hard.
And a lot of that is, again, still this ego that kind of protects, right? Holds on to us. The ego is there to protect us. So I get it. I understand it. But sometimes it's like actually making things more dangerous for us.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know where I learned it, but I learned it years ago from listening to some interview with some successful person. The danger of believing your press clippings.
Yeah.
And I always try to remind myself, because sometimes the hubris that comes from success can be intoxicating, and then can become the reason why you don't continue to have as much success. I'm going to shift our focus, Tony, a little bit to artificial intelligence. From your perspective, what's your sense of how AI is impacting your clients and maybe your practice, and just a general sense for artificial intelligence?
Yeah, it's very much going to be part of our future. We know that. It's that new technology that's coming in. But I think when you look at humans, one thing that artificial intelligence can't do is the emotional connection. They can't do the work of, manual labor, as it were, so that's kind of safe. But in my world, there's not an artificial intelligence that can look you in the eye, ask you meaningful questions, and then give you the answers to challenge you to kind of think of where you want to go in the business world. So I see it to support me. I use artificial intelligence. I use ChatGPT a lot, but I use it as an assistant. And I think there are some times when I'm putting together marketing material and I'll use it as my marketing department, and I'll go back and forth with it as if it was an employee. It's important to do that. There isn't just one prompt to solve them all. You've actually got to, talk to it and treat it like it's there as an assistant.
Yeah, that's great. I've heard from many of the guests very similar insight, and maybe phrasing it like think of it as an intern.
Yeah.
Don't assume it knows more than it does. Treat it like an intern. And
Sure.
I think the quality of it's sort of like coaching in life, huh? The qualities of the questions that you ask it gives you the output. So it's really the quality of questions.
Yeah.
I notice in your voice a slight accent. I don't know. You might be a native Orange County person. I can't say that's not the case, Tony, but.
No, I'm originally from England. I moved over here in 2000. I was actually a salesman, and that's what brought me over here.
Are you happy with the move?
I am. Yes, the weather is stunning. So yeah, it's a great place to live for sure.
Yeah, that's a big change, isn't it, though?
Yeah, it's certainly one of the biggest changes I've had in my life. It's hard to move to a different country with different culture and different ways of doing things. I mean, I didn't have a language barrier, but there were still many times where I felt like I didn't really belong and I didn't understand what was going on. It's amazing how we can speak the same language, but it sounds so very different in many, many ways.
Right. Yeah. And you got to learn to drive on the other side of the road.
Right. That was one of the toughest things. And I've got to learn to call it soccer and not football.
There you go. Because we have our own football, baby. And we got that term. So, yes. Yeah. Anyway, the Olympics are going on right now.
Yes, they are. The women are playing right now. The US.
Oh, right now? Okay. Because I saw yesterday that the USA lost their first match.
To France.
Okay, here we go. All right. So let's talk about tomorrow, Tony. What's the vision for your career, for your coaching practice moving forward?
So it comes back into the driven leadership model of things. I see driven leadership is a leadership training company that doesn't necessarily show people how to lead. It's not a PowerPoint where you go and do X, Y, and Z. It's more about finding the inner leader, which is what really attracts me to this organization. It's looking inside and getting the best out of you and owning who you are and stepping up to be your best self. And so my coaching will fold into that and helping people go to the next level, live all in, really defy the status quo and do things differently. And tuck into their vision, right? My vision is to inspire people to believe in themselves so they can step boldly into their brilliance. I want people to be out there engaged in the world in such a way that they love what they do. They're awake to what's around them. They're engaged with their family. They're engaged with their work. And that fire then sets fire to people around them. And driven leadership is a part of that spark. My personal best coaching is the support underneath that of the coaching that people need.
So if someone wants to connect with you on LinkedIn, Tony, how do they find you? And if they want to learn more about your current approach, what's the website? Where should they go?
So they can find me at Everett 66 on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn, so message me anytime on there. I'm always on there every day. 2 websites. mpbcoaching.com is my coaching site. That's if you're a little lost, a little confused as to mission, vision, and purpose. And then Driven Leadership is the leadership site that really kind of can blow people up in the world of leadership. So one of those 2 as far as a website.
Okay, those are both easy to find, and I really like what you said earlier too, because I believe to be a leader with integrity, you have to be yourself, because your employees will see the real you, whether you want them to or not. Yeah. And so it is best to be, don't be somebody else. Yeah. Learn lessons from other great leaders, but you got to make it your own secret sauce, don't you?
You have. Yeah. There's something I learned a little while ago is 9/10 of leadership can be taught from a book or a PowerPoint or a classroom. But the final 10th is you. The final 10th is in here. And that final 10th is where we want to play, because that brings the best out. And unfortunately, that's the final 10th is the bit that most people hide. They tuck it away, put it under their bed, because they don't want to stand out and they don't want to be different. But as a leader, we've really got to be able to stand out and be different, because we've got to be ourselves, which means that we've got to be different than everyone else.
Yeah, and we don't want to be rejected. Right?
Yes.
That last 10th, boy, if people turn away from that, that is our core.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
This has been great. I told you, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to have a good show at the top. And so I have to thank you, Tony. Thank you for taking time out of the busy life you have to be our guest today.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here.
And thank you to the audience. You've just been a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Tony's episode now goes into our catalog of over 1,500 shows. If you happen to be an Orange County entrepreneur or a leader of a nonprofit organization, and you would like to share your story with our audience, it's easy. If we're not already connected on LinkedIn, give me a connection request. Put that you'd like to be a guest on the show in the connection request. If we're already connected on LinkedIn, just send me a message and let me know, an email or whatever, and let me know you'd like to be a guest. Between Haley, our producer, and myself, we can get you ready to be a future guest on the program. So we'd love to do that. We're always looking for new guests for the show. And until the next time we all have a chance to be together here on Critical Mass Business Talk Show, I hope your decisions will move your organizations in a positive direction.